Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the clutter to get to the core of what you need to know. Today, using the great sources you've shared, we're tackling one of those really ingrained myths.
Which one is that?
The brilliant, self-made individual. You know, the person who rises from absolutely nothing through sheer grit and talent. It's a story we love to tell.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere. The narrative that focuses almost entirely on, say, individual smarts and raw ambition. Yeah. Like Benjamin Franklin, supposedly owing nothing to anyone.
Exactly. But this deep dive, we're going to flip that idea on its head using Malcolm Gladwell's fantastic book, Outliers, The Story of Success. We'll unpack why some people succeed so much more than others.
And as you'll find out, it's a lot more complicated and honestly way more interesting than just pure intelligence and drive.
Our mission today is really to explore your shared material, dig out those key nuggets of knowledge and insight, give you a fresh perspective on success.
Help you understand those hidden advantages, the unique opportunities that often sit just beneath the surface. Get ready for some real aha moments, I think.
All right, let's jump right in. Gladwell's central argument. Success isn't just raw talent. It's often deeply tied to where and when you grew up, the specific circumstances, the opportunities you got.
Yeah, and he kicks off with a really surprising example. Canadian junior hockey.
You'd think that system would be pure meritocracy, right? A tough filtering process to find the absolute best kids based on skill alone.
That's the ideal, sure. But when you look closely at the rosters, like the Medicine Hat Tigers he mentions, something odd pops out.
What's that?
A huge number of the elite players are born in January, February, or March, the first 3 months of the year.
Huh. That sounds almost like astrology determining hockey success.
It really does look like it.
Yeah.
But no, it's much more mundane. It's the eligibility cutoff date. In Canada, for age-class hockey, it's January 1st.
Okay. So how does that play out?
Well, think about it. A kid born January 2nd is in the same league as one born December 31st of the same year.
What?
When they're 9 or 10, the age when selections for the elite rep teams start.
Ah, that January kid is almost a full year older. Physically bigger, more coordinated, probably?
Exactly. So those slightly older, bigger kids, they get noticed. They get labeled talented. And that's where the snowball starts.
Right, this accumulated advantage idea. They get picked for the better teams, get the better coaching, more ice time, play against better competition.
Which makes them even better, reinforcing the initial perception. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like the Matthew effect from the Bible. For unto everyone that hath shall be given.
And he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. The rich get richer, opportunity-wise.
Precisely. And it's not just hockey. You see similar patterns in European soccer. England's September 1st cutoff skews rosters the same way.
And even in schools, right. Younger kids in a kindergarten class sometimes struggle to keep up initially.
And that gap can actually persist for years. The system, completely unintentionally, ends up overlooking talent born later in the calendar year. It's kind of a waste.
So these early opportunities provide a crucial head start. But what do they actually allow people to do? What's the next piece?
Well, that head start often translates into the chance for massive amounts of practice, really dedicated practice.
This is where the famous 10,000-hour rule comes in.
Yes, exactly. Gladwell highlights psychologist K. Anders Ericsson's study of violinists at Berlin's Elite Academy of Music. The finding was pretty stark.
What did they find?
The very best violinists, the future world-class soloists. By age 20, they had all practiced for roughly 10,000 hours. The merely good students had around 8,000, and the future music teachers about 4,000.
So no naturals who just coasted, and no grinds who worked super hard but didn't have the innate gift.
Ericsson didn't find them. His research suggests that once you're good enough to get into a top program, what separates the best from the rest is primarily the sheer volume of deliberate practice.
10,000 hours. That number keeps popping up.
It does. Neurologist Daniel Levitin calls it the magic number for true expertise. It seems to apply across wildly different fields: composers, basketball players, fiction writers, chess masters, even master criminals, apparently.
Wow. So the brain just needs that much time to achieve real mastery.
That seems to be the idea. You don't find world-class expertise achieved in significantly less time. But the crucial insight here isn't just the hours.
It's having the chance to do those hours.
Exactly. It's the extraordinary opportunity and often the support system that allows someone to put in that kind of time.
That really reframes some famous stories, like the Beatles. We think of their sudden explosion in '64.
But before that, they'd played an estimated 1,200 gigs, many in Hamburg, Germany, playing 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week.
That Hamburg period was intense. John Lennon said something like, "We got good in Hamburg. We had to play for hours and hours."
We couldn't help but improve. That was their crucible. Their 10,000 hours.
And you see it in tech, too, like Bill Joy, co-founder of Sun Microsystems.
Absolutely. His break was getting into the University of Michigan in 1971. It had one of the world's first and best computer science programs. Crucially, it had a time-sharing system.
Meaning he could program a lot.
Practically nonstop. He had the access, the opportunity that very few people had at that specific moment in time.
And Bill Gates. Similar story even earlier.
Even earlier, yeah, 1968, 8th grade.
Yeah.
His private school, Lakeside, got a time-sharing terminal linked to a mainframe. That was incredibly rare.
So he started programming really young.
Super young. When the school's money ran out, he found ways to get free computer time at the University of Washington, often programming between 3 and 6 a.m.
Wow.
By the time he dropped out of Harvard to start Microsoft, he'd been programming intensely for 7 straight years, way past 10,000 hours. He himself said maybe only 50 people in the world had that kind of experience then.
So again, it's not just innate genius. It's talent plus extraordinary opportunity plus the means to rack up those hours.
That's the core argument. The opportunity is often the differentiator.
Okay, so if it's not just about raw talent or even just practice hours, what does this mean for our usual ideas about intelligence? Like IQ.
Yeah, that's another fascinating part of Outliers. Gladwell challenges the idea that higher IQ always equals more success.
He introduces Chris Langan, right? The guy with the supposedly off-the-charts IQ.
That's him. IQ estimated around 195 or 200. Way higher than Einstein's estimated 150. He was on that show 1 versus 100, billed as the smartest man in America.
So surely he must be incredibly successful.
Well, that's the puzzle. Because research suggests there's an IQ threshold once you hit an IQ of, say, 120 or so.
Which is already pretty smart.
Right, it's definitely above average. But beyond that point, having an even higher IQ doesn't seem to give you a measurable real-world advantage. It's like height in basketball.
How so?
You need to be tall enough to play professionally. But being 6'8" isn't automatically better than being 6'6". Other skills matter more once you meet the basic height requirement.
So IQ is like that. You need to be smart enough.
That seems to be the case. Look at Nobel laureates in science. Yes, some went to Harvard or MIT, but plenty went to less famous schools like Holy Cross or the University of Illinois.
They were just smart enough to get into a decent university.
Exactly. And a University of Michigan Law School study on affirmative action backed this up. Minority students admitted with lower test scores were just as successful in their careers years later as their peers with higher scores.
Because they were all above that minimum threshold of intelligence needed for law school and the profession.
Precisely. Their slightly lower scores didn't predict their eventual success because beyond that threshold, other things become more important.
Okay, so if IQ isn't the whole story past a certain point, what else matters? Gladwell talks about practical intelligence. What is that?
It's a concept from psychologist Robert Sternberg. He defines it as knowing what to say to whom, knowing when to say it, and knowing how to say it for maximum effect. It's basically street smarts or social savvy.
Like knowing how to navigate situations and people to get what you need.
Exactly. It's procedural knowledge, knowing how to do things. Correct. Not just knowing that things are true, which is more analytical intelligence or IQ. And crucially, they're separate skills.
And the contrast between Chris Langan and Robert Oppenheimer really highlights this, doesn't it?
It's a stark contrast. Langan, despite his incredible IQ, really struggled. He lost a scholarship because his mother didn't fill out a form. He couldn't persuade a dean to change his class schedule when his car broke down. He felt alienated, unable to make the world listen to his ideas.
Whereas Oppenheimer, who ran the Manhattan Project, also brilliant, obviously.
Also brilliant, yes. And he had his own issues. He apparently tried to poison his tutor in grad school, but he possessed this incredible practical intelligence.
He knew how to work the system.
He knew how to charm people, how to persuade them, how to get things done. He won over General Groves, the military head of the project, by speaking his language, focusing on practical solutions, understanding the logistical challenges. He could make the world see things his way.
So where does this practical intelligence come from? Are you born with it?
That's the key question. And Gladwell argues, based on sociologist Annette Lareau's research, that it's often learned, heavily influenced by your upbringing.
Lareau's study unequal childhoods.
Yes. She found distinct parenting styles. Middle-class parents often engage in what she calls concerted cultivation.
Meaning?
Their kids' lives are heavily scheduled with activities. Parents actively foster talents, reason with their children, encourage them to ask questions, negotiate, even challenge authority respectfully. They cultivate a sense of entitlement in a positive way, like the child feeling they have the right to speak up and be heard.
Like the example of the kid questioning his doctor.
Exactly, Alex Williams. He felt comfortable interrupting and advocating for himself.
And the contrast is accomplishment of natural growth.
Right, often seen in working class and poorer families. Kids have more unstructured free time, more independence in some ways, but interactions with authority figures tend to be more directive. Parents give commands, kids are expected to obey. They're generally more deferential and less comfortable negotiating with institutions.
So Oppenheimer, from a wealthy, educated family, likely benefited from concerted cultivation.
Which gave him the social skills, the practical intelligence that Langan, from a more isolated and less privileged background, lacked. It wasn't about IQ points. It was about learning how to make your way in the world.
This is fascinating. It really broadens the picture of success. It's not just individual traits, but opportunities, practice, upbringing, and, as Gladwell argues, cultural legacies too.
Absolutely. The histories and attitudes we inherit from our ancestors play a huge, often invisible role.
Let's look at Joe Flom, the legendary M&A lawyer at Skadden, Arcs, often seen as the classic self-made man, rags to riches.
Right, the poor child of garment workers.
Huh.
But Gladwell digs deeper. Flom was Jewish, starting his career when the elite white-shoe Wall Street firms were deeply prejudiced.
They wouldn't hire lawyers like him, preferring WASPs with the right background.
Exactly. And those establishment firms looked down on certain types of legal work specifically, litigation and hostile takeovers or proxy fights. They thought it was messy, undignified work.
So Flom and other lawyers from similar backgrounds shut out from the prestigious corporate work.
Had to take the work nobody else wanted. They ended up specializing in hostile takeovers and litigation. They spent decades honing their skills in that specific niche.
And then, decades later,
Hostile takeovers suddenly became a huge central part of corporate finance in the 70s and 80s. And who were the experts?
Flom and his firm, they'd already put in their 10,000 hours in that specific area thanks to the very prejudice that initially held them back.
Precisely. What looked like a disadvantage turned into a golden opportunity. Adversity became advantage. But there's another layer too. Demographic luck.
Demographic luck, how does that fit in?
Flom was born in the early 1920s. This put him in a relatively small birth cohort because of the preceding flu epidemic and the Great Depression suppressing birth rates in the 1930s.
So less competition.
Less competition for spots in good schools, smaller class sizes, more attention from teachers. Many highly qualified women couldn't get other jobs during the Depression. And then when his generation hit the job market, there was high demand for labor.
So timing helped too. It wasn't just his skill, but being born at the right time.
It was a confluence of factors. And beneath that, another cultural legacy from his background, the garment industry.
His parents worked in it, like many Jewish immigrants in New York back then.
Right. And Gladwell argues that the garment trade itself instilled valuable traits. It was entrepreneurial. You could start small. It demanded autonomy, complexity, long hours.
And crucially, a clear link between effort and reward. Like the story of the Borgenics sewing aprons all night and selling them the next day.
Yes. That experience of meaningful, complex, autonomous work where effort paid off, that cultural inheritance, combined with the demographic luck and the unexpected opportunity in law, created the conditions for success for that generation. It wasn't despite their background, but in many ways because of it.
Wow. Okay, shifting gears a bit, but sticking with cultural legacies. Harlan, Kentucky, famous for its violent feuds.
A very different kind of legacy. Long-standing, brutal conflicts like the Howard Turner feud, part of a pattern across Appalachia.
And Gladwell traces this back to a culture of honor.
Exactly. Brought over by settlers from the remote, lawless borderlands of Britain. In those regions, a man's reputation, his livelihood, depended on his willingness to defend his honor, often violently, because formal law enforcement was weak or non-existent.
Does that kind of cultural mindset, can it really persist over generations, even in modern America?
It seems so. There was that insult experiment at the University of Michigan. Researchers deliberately bumped into and insulted male students.
What happened?
Young men who grew up in the South, whose ancestors likely came from those borderland cultures, reacted very differently than Northerners. Their stress hormone levels, cortisol, testosterone, spiked much higher. They were visibly angrier, had firmer handshakes afterwards. The Northerners were more likely to just shrug it off or find it amusing.
So the cultural pattern of reacting strongly to perceived insults endured? A kind of social heritance.
That's the term, yeah. It shows how deep these cultural roots can go.
Uh, This idea of cultural patterns influencing behavior extends even to plane crashes.
It sounds strange, but yes. Korean Air, for a period, had a terrible safety record, 17 times worse than United Airlines in the decade leading up to 1998.
What was going on? Gladwell focuses on communication, right? Using the Avianca Flight 052 crash as an example.
Right. That flight crashed near New York because it ran out of fuel, a tragedy caused by a cascade of small problems. But a key factor was how the crew communicated with air traffic control.
The first officer was trying to convey the fuel emergency, but
But he used what linguists call mitigated speech. Instead of saying, "We have a fuel emergency," he used hints, suggestions, downplayed the urgency, "We're running low on fuel," said in a way that ATC interpreted as just a comment, not a critical warning.
why would he do that in such a critical situation?
This ties into cultural dimensions, specifically power distance, identified by Geer Hofstede. It measures how much a culture accepts unequal power distribution.
And Colombia, where Avianca is from, and South Korea.
Are both high power distance cultures. Subordinates are expected to be deferential to superiors, very respectful, hesitant to speak directly or challenge authority. The U.S., by contrast, is a low power distance culture.
So in the cockpit, a first officer from a high power distance culture might struggle to directly tell the captain, "You're making a mistake," or to be blunt with air traffic control.
Exactly. They might hint, suggest, defer, even when facing danger. The Korean air crash in Guam showed similar patterns, the flight engineer hinting about the weather radar, the first officer delaying the call for a missed approach until it was too late.
So how did Korean Air fix it?
They brought in an outsider from Delta, David Greenberg. He made a crucial change, mandating English as the language for all flight operations.
English. Why English?
Because English, as the international language of aviation, tends to be more direct. It helped bypass the culturally ingrained patterns of mitigated speech associated with the Korean language in that hierarchical context. It forced clearer, less ambiguous communication. And their safety record improved dramatically.
It's incredible how culture impacts something so technical. And that leads to another surprising cultural connection: rice paddies and math scores.
Right. The persistent outperformance of students from Asian cultures in international math comparisons. It's not, Gladwell argues, some innate ability.
Part of it is language you mentioned, the number system.
Yes, Asian number systems are often more transparent and logical. 11 is literally 10-1, 12 is 10-2, 24 is 2 10s 4.
Wow.
This makes counting and basic arithmetic conceptually easier for young children to grasp. Math seems to make sense earlier.
But there's something deeper, too, linked to agriculture.
Yes, the legacy of wet rice farming. Unlike Western wheat or corn farming, traditional wet rice cultivation is incredibly labor-intensive. We're talking maybe 3,000 hours of work per year per farmer, compared to maybe 1,000 or 1,200 for a European peasant.
And it's complex work.
Extremely. Requires precision, coordination, vigilance, making careful choices all year round. And critically, there's a strong correlation between effort and reward. The harder and smarter you work your paddy, the more rice you get.
There's that proverb he mentions.
No one who can rise before dawn 360 days a year fails to make his family rich. It reflects a deeply ingrained cultural value placed on persistence, diligence, and hard work.
And that translates to math. How?
Because math, especially higher-level math, is also about persistence. It's about sticking with the difficult problem. Alan Schoenfeld's research shows students who succeed aren't necessarily the ones who find it easy, but the ones willing to struggle with a problem for 20 minutes rather than giving up after 2.
Like Renee, the nursing student learning algebra.
Exactly. She worked on one problem for 22 minutes, refusing to give up. That attitude, that willingness to persist, is crucial for math. And that attitude, Gladwell suggests, is part of the cultural legacy stemming from things like rice farming.
So the KPP schools in places like the South Bronx are trying to build that same persistence.
In a way, yes. By having longer school days, Saturday classes, summer school, they're giving disadvantaged kids more time to learn, but also trying to instill that ethic of hard work and persistence that middle-class kids might get through concerted cultivation and that Asian students might inherit culturally. They're providing the time and structure needed to overcome challenges.
It's like applying the rice paddy principle to education in a different context.
You could say that, tackling the summer vacation problem, where kids, especially poorer kids, lose ground academically.
Finally, Gladwell ties it all together with his own family story.
Yeah, it's a powerful personal connection. He traces his mother's success getting a university education in Jamaica, not just to her own brilliance or effort, but to a series of historical events and legacies.
Going back generations.
Way back to his great-great-great-grandmother, an Igbo slave in Jamaica, bought by an Irish plantation owner. The son was mixed race, part of Jamaica's colored population.
And that group had a unique history in Jamaica.
Yes, they gained civil rights earlier than in many other places and formed a kind of middle-class elite, often entering professions like law and medicine. His mother inherited this legacy of possibility through her own grandmother, Daisy Nation, who fiercely believed in education and secured opportunities for her daughters.
So his mother's success wasn't just her own doing, but a result of history's gifts.
That's how he puts it, including the privileges of that skin tone within Jamaican society at the time and the cultural emphasis on education passed down through her family. It's a product of intertwined advantages.
So wrapping this deep dive up, the big takeaway from Outliers, drawing from all your sources, is that the super successful person, the outlier, isn't really an outlier in the sense of being inexplicable.
Not at all. Success isn't random, it's not magic. It emerges from a complex web of advantages. History, community, opportunity, cultural legacies. Some are earned, some are just lucky breaks, some are deserved, some aren't.
It forces us to look beyond just the individual.
It really does. We need to acknowledge that web of advantages and inheritances, as Gladwell calls it. We're often so focused on the myth of individual merit, the self-made person, that we miss the crucial role these background factors play.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about Bill Gates and that rare early access to a computer terminal in 1968.
What if, instead of just 1 or 50 kids having that kind of opportunity back then?
What if 1 million teenagers had been given the same chance? How many more Microsofts might we have today? What if society stopped relying on a patchwork of lucky breaks and arbitrary advantages and deliberately tried to create those kinds of opportunities for everyone? Imagine how much richer in every sense our world could be.